What are you doing here? I didn't expect to ever see you again. You're not welcome here. In the parable of the lost son found in Luke 15, verses 11 through 32, that's the expected response from the father in the story. If you don't know the story, it's what the book, the Prodigal God, which is the book we're reading right now, or I'm reading right now, is all about. The book takes that parable and really breaks it down to show God's love. In the story, you've got, to paraphrase it, you have a father and two sons. And you have a younger son and an elder son. And the elder son, does everything right by the father. He works hard. He does everything he tells him to. But the younger son is kind of, like a better way to say it, seems like he's fed up. So he asks for his inheritance before his dad passes away, which is just crazy back then. Usually that kind of thing, according to Timothy Keller, the author of the book, could result in physical blow. Definitely a leaving of the property, but not the way expected. It'd be a lost son, basically. But the father actually gives the son the inheritance, and the younger son, runs off and he wastes it and spends it in a million different ways, and all of a sudden he's immediately out of money. And where he went, the land he went into, then hit a famine. And so he was struggling. He found a job feeding pigs. But as he was feeding the pigs, he realized the pigs had more food than him, and he was starving and he was miserable. And he said, I've done wrong here. I've sinned against heaven and against my father, and I need to go back home and apologize. And maybe, just maybe, he'll take me back as a hired servant. Not as a son. He didn't expect that to ever happen. But as a hired servant, because he knew his father's servants were paid well and fed well. And so he goes back, and on his way back, he's getting close to home. His dad sees him from a distance, and he goes running up to him, gives him a big hug, and decides to hold a big feast. They're going to kill the most prized calf they have. He gets robes and rings and everything for him, and says, who was lost is now found, who was dead to us is now alive again. And he basically takes his son back. No questions asked. He accepts his apology. He was just looking to be a hired servant. He wasn't expecting the mercy and love of his father that he got. And so the other way, how it started out, is what you would kind of expect. You'd expect somebody in that situation who just took all his money and left and then wasn't going to talk to you ever again to be like, what are you doing here? So that's part of the story. So the second part of that story is about the elder son, who, on learning that the younger son has returned, basically throws a fit. And he refuses his father's request for him to join him at the feast. And he refuses to do anything, and he basically says, I've done everything right, but you've never even given me a goat to celebrate with my friends. How is this fair? And so he's very disrespectful to his father. He's disobedient. And his father says, very simply, you've always been with me. You've always been rewarded. Now come, someone who was lost is found again. Your brother who was dead is alive again. And that's where the story ends. And so that's what the book's going to go into, which I think is really cool. For me, what I've learned in the first two chapters is that parable and just reading through it. And the first lesson I learned was really around context, because the first thing that Timothy Keller goes into is he talks about how important it is to understand who Jesus was talking to when he shared this parable. In verse 1 and 2 of chapter 15, Luke points it out that Jesus was talking to both Pharisees and sinners. And so this was a cry not only to the sinners of, hey, there's a time coming you're going to be able to repent, and God's love and mercy is never ending. But it was also a cry to the Pharisees, who thought because they followed the law, they were kind of above the law. Biggest lesson, I think, so far, and not intended, is context. Is understanding that there's not one single verse in the Bible. Now, sometimes there are verses that speak to you, but you need to always understand the context of the Bible, because there's more to the story than just one verse. And so reading through and understanding why it was said and when it was said is very important to really understand the meaning of the Bible. The second part is one that is really this beginning of reflection for me. Am I a younger son or am I an elder son? And so it's really interesting to start thinking about that. And so that's the one that's on my head. I have a couple of questions for you if you're reading along or if you picked up the book. And question one is when you read the Bible, Are you really taking everything into context? Are you reading the whole chapter, or do you just stop at a couple of verses? Or do you get more of the perspective of what was going on in the story to help you understand the lessons that God's teaching us? And then the second one is, which son are you? Are you an elder son? Are you a younger son? How are you lost? And why do I think that's an important question? For me, it's the question of, if I can understand the ways, if you will, the ways that I've failed, maybe I have a better chance of succeeding as we go forward in the future. Now, I'm not saying that I'll ever be perfect, because there's only one perfect person in this world, and that was Christ. But to be more Christ-like, I think, is a good ambition. And so I want to learn how to do that. And I think I've got to start by recognizing my faults. If you got something different from the book, don't be afraid to comment below and share your counterpoint, or share what you did learn, or add on to what I've thrown in, or say, Mike, I think you're absolutely off the wall. You're barking up the wrong tree, however you want to say it. Finally, I guess it's some kind of law. I have to say like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That actually, I guess, as time goes on, can help me to have more space to be able to post more videos, or something like that. I haven't really read the fine print, but like and subscribe, because that's the cool thing to do. All the young kids are doing it, and all the older kids are doing it too, and so don't miss your opportunity to be cool like everybody else. That was peer pressure. I don't know, did that work?